I'm Tony Nato.
And I'm Betty Nato.
Welcome to Weekly Wine Show.
Now let's talk about wine.
This is episode 175, and this week features our interview with Theodora Lee, also known as Theopatra, Queen of the Vineyards. She is the owner and founder of Theopolis Vineyards in Yorkville Highlands of Anderson Valley.
Thank you for joining us. Theodora Lee, also known as Theopatra, Queen of the Vineyards. So we always like to start off by having folks that we have an opportunity to interview take us through your wine journey. How did you end up starting a winery?
Well, I actually started a vineyard. My love for wine started not as a winery, but as a vineyard developer. I am a native Texan. I grew up in Dallas. My father had a farm outside of Dallas in Ellis County. I learned to drive at the age of 8 on a tractor. My grandfather was a sharecropper, so farming was in my blood. My father was a school administrator and college dean, but we spent the weekends at the farm. I moved to San Francisco in the 80s. As a lawyer. I came out of the University of Texas Law School, went to work as an associate at Littler Mendocino, and some of the law firm partners at that time had vineyards in Napa, Sonoma. At the time, there were no means of sending briefs via email or fax, and so if a partner was at their weekend home in Sonoma or Napa or Hillsburg, I would have to drive the brief to that partner's home that weekend. They would review and edit it. Many of them would invite me to stay for dinner. Some would let me stay overnight. My mentor-in-law in wine was Barbara De Adoni and her husband Pierre, who was a chief physicist. And so I really saw the lifestyle of a vineyard owner and thought I could combine my love for farming and grow grapes. Obviously, that was in the 80s as a single woman living in California. It took me a while before I could actually make my dream come true. So in 2001, I purchased 20 acres of sheep land in Yorkville Highlands of the Anderson Valley and began developing my vineyard. I had to do soil samples, doing escrow to make sure the land was suitable for growing grapes. After I bought the land, we had to do more soil sampling. We had viticulturists come out and examine the land to see what grape would be grown best on that property because I'm surrounded by fir and redwood trees. And so in 2003, I planted my vineyard. I adopted my Greek name from when I pledged Delta Sigma Theta at Spelman College and established Theopolis Vineyards. I grew grapes from 2003 to 2012. All I really wanted to do was be a gentlewoman farmer, a grape farmer. I took courses at UC Davis in viticulture to learn all about growing grapes because great wine starts in the vineyard. So I learned about, mowing, chopping, weed eating, erosion control, tying the shoots, fruit thinning, picking the grapes. So I had my first harvest in 2006. I sold my grapes to a guy by the name of Mike Officer at Carlisle. He is a true wine guru. He's got a cult following. People signed up to be on his wine club mailing list. And so I sold my grapes from 2006 until 2012. And then one thing I forgot to mention, my first harvest in 2006, Carlisle made the Petit Syrah from grapes from Theopolis Vineyards, and Robert Parker, the wine critic, rated it 94, 96 points. That was my first harvest. So that put me on the map. Let's move forward to 2012. In the spring of 2012, I had a new contract with another winery that they had bought in. We had actually left Carlisle in 26, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I had a contract for 2010, 11, and 12. And so with a new buyer. And in the spring of 2012, that buyer said, we'll honor the contract through 2012 because we have a 3-year contract, but we won't be buying in 2013. I said, fine, no problem. When Parker gives wine made from your grapes, 94, 96, you don't have any trouble selling the grapes. Well, so that was fine. But in the fall of 2012, I had to pick in the rain, okay? And when I picked, the contract level was supposed to be 25 bricks. I picked at 22.5 bricks. I delivered the wine to the buyer. He rejected the grapes because they did not meet the contractual bricks level. So I had 8 tons of grapes on the back of grape bins, on the back of a truck with no home. I could sell a lot of stuff, but in 24 hours, I couldn't find a buyer. So I found a place to actually do a fruit crush in Hopland, which is a few miles away. Now, I then inquired about what it would cost to make the wine, and I fell out of my chair because I had no clue what it cost to make wine. So, I'm a lawyer. I'm an employment lawyer. We do okay, but I just don't have, that kind of money hanging out. So I bartered to get my first wines bottled. My Petit Syrah was 2012. We didn't bottle it until 2014. I found a winemaker up in Mendocino who was willing to bottle half of it under his label so he could in turn sell it and get paid for making my wine. That 2012 Petit Syrah won a gold medal at Sunset Magazine. So that's the short story to my adventure into making wine.
It's so interesting to hear your story, and you're still working full-time as a lawyer and farming and making wine, which...
That is true. That is true. It's a labor of love. I don't have any children. I never got married. So, how lots of folks spend a lot of time and invest in their children. I've invested in my little grapes, and I call them my little babies, and they produce great wine. And I still continue to sell the grapes because I am a full-time lawyer. And it also benefits my brand because Paul Gordon at Halcon Vineyards was an excellent winemaker, and he puts Theopolis Vineyards on his bottle. And that's all I ever wanted from the beginning was a vineyard designation on the bottle. Now I've got that, have my own brand, and so far, so good. We keep bottling pretty award-winning wines.
So you're in Yorkville Highlands, right?
Correct. We're in the Yorkville Highlands of Anderson Valley. If you go on Highway 128, leave Cloverdale, you get to the Highlands first before you go down into the Anderson Valley.
And what makes that area unique compared to other areas or regions?
Well, first of all, it's a highly elevated, rugged interior wine growing region. We get all 4 seasons. Where I sit in Yorkville, I was up this weekend, and it was 100 degrees. In the winter, we could look out at the vineyard and see snow on the ground. The elevation, I'm actually one of the lower elevated vineyards, but most of the area is highly elevated, which means that it's a unique wine growing region. It's an interior wine growing region, which means we get all 4 seasons, which I think makes us unique. Also, we're mostly small vineyards. We are handcrafted, small lot vineyards, so that makes us unique. And also the land is very unique. I grow Petit Syrah, and the area where I'm located is ideal for growing Petit Syrah. As I mentioned, I brought in a viticulture professional doing escrow. After escrow, I brought in the nursery consultant to really determine, looking at the soil, looking at the trees. I am surrounded by fir and redwoods, and so we lose sun after a while. So we had to find a grape that was suitable for that area. It's not cool enough to grow Chardonnay and Pinot like our sister down in the Anderson Valley. I don't get full-time sun, so I couldn't grow Cabernet, but Petite grows ideally there. And that's what makes us unique.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned grapes because that leads into my next question. So you talked about really picking the right grapes for the area of land that you have. So we had an opportunity to try a few of your wines, and they were fantastic, by the way. And we always love when people are making wines with lesser known varieties. Not that we don't love some of the other ones as well. So you're choosing Petite Sirah. You also have wines made from the Symphony grapes. And then, of course, you have some Pinot Noir as well. So, you know, you talk about the land and that kind of dictating some of your choices, but maybe talk a little bit more about Pinot Noir and Symphony. Like, what was the choice behind picking those grapes to make wine?
Well, as I mentioned, I grow Petite Sirah, and I hadn't planned to bottle, but in 2012, I was forced to bottle wine. And so by the time we had the Petite Sirah ready for bottling in 2014, I realized that there are people like my father, rest his soul, he died in 2016, but in 2014, he was still alive and very active in my life, as well as my mom. Well, my mom doesn't drink, but my father didn't drink red wine. So I said, you know, I need to not just bottle a Petite. First of all, it's a, you know, unique, not well-known wine. I need to find a equally unique white wine to bottle along with the Petite Sirah. So in 2014, I only bottled 2 wines, and that was the Petite Sirah that I grow and the Symphony grape. Now, you may or may not be familiar with the Symphony grape, but this was created by Professor Olmo at the University of California, Davis. He started working on this varietal back in the 40s. It was not recognized as a varietal until 1976. And there's only 1,000 acres of it planted in all of the United States. It grows in fairly warm climates. So, as I mentioned, I had a winemaker who was willing to barter with me. That same winemaker happened to have not only Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, but also had Symphony vineyards. And so I was familiar with his Symphony. He had made both a dry Symphony and an off-dry Symphony. Being from Texas, I didn't drink wine until I moved to California. In fact, I would be seeing the mentor who I first learned about drinking fine wine with this Saturday. He's about 80 years old, and I haven't seen him since I've been in the wine business, but we recently reconnected, and I am taking him some wines because before I came here, I didn't drink wine because my dad used to take wild muscadine that grows wild in the South and make wine. Well, muscadine is perhaps for me the nastiest wine that I could put my lips around. But some people like that sweet stuff. I didn't. So I don't bottle sweet wine. So if people say, what do you have sweet? I say, keep moving because I have nothing. But the Symphony that I actually bottle is a dry Symphony, totally dry. I just won a gold medal from the Press Democrat North Coast competition, and I found out some interesting things about the Symphony grape. And, you know, I knew about, you know, Professor Olmo, but I didn't really know that there was a winery that was trying to make Symphony the next Chardonnay. But one of the judges at the competition was telling me how, you know, it was very unique that I was doing it, and I had been very successful at taking the sweetness out of that grapes. So he told me about this Chateau winery that was really trying to do something with the Symphony grape, but failed miserably. So that is the varietal that I first selected following when I was going to first bottle in 2014. I also do a rosé of Petite Sirah, which is very, very unique. again, another mistake. As I mentioned, in 2012, the buyer rejected the grapes, but I immediately got another buyer for 2013. We picked at the same time in 2013, and we both made award-winning wine. That 2013 Petit won Best Petit Syrah in the World by the Sommelier Journal. His Petit did extremely well as well. But in 2014, I had the nerve to go on a wine immersion cruise in Europe. I came back, and he had picked all of the ripest Petit Syrah grapes. And so having had the experience I had in 2012, I didn't want to stick around and wait for the grapes to get right. So I pulled. But, of course, they were not, the Brix level was not high enough, and it was not ripe enough to make a full-bodied Petit. So we made a rosé of Petit Syrah. We got a nod in the LA Times because what fool would take the darkest, inkiest red grape to make a rosé? And the rosé is not pink, it's more like ruby. But that won double gold at the San Francisco Chronicle competition. So again, I've taken lemons and tried to turn them into lemonade. And then my taste buds tend to go toward, more high acidity, bolder wines like a Petit Syrah, even a Syrah Cab, and never have been much of a Pinot Noir lover. But, I am a businesswoman, and Pinot Noir is probably the best-selling red varietal. And people love Pinot Noir. It's very versatile. It can go with a number of foods. And I also do wine dinner. So I had the Symphony on the light white end. Then I had the big bold Petit on the other end, the opposite end. Then the rosé kind of filled in, but the rosé is not your traditional rosé. So people begged me to bottle a Pinot. So I bottled my first Pinot I bottled a 2014 Pinot out of the Anderson Valley to be distinguished from the Yorkville Highlands. And then I've bottled since Yorkville Highlands. So I play around with Pinot because I have to source that fruit. And so I have done some fun things with it. In 2014, I decided that I was going to try to bottle a Pinot Noir. So I bottled a Anderson Valley Pinot. And I bottled that in 2015, but the harvest year was 2014. And I bottled it unfined and unfiltered. Most Americans love to see pretty wine. Well, unfiltered and unfined wine means that it's cloudy. It's not clear. It's not the most gorgeous thing in the world, but people who can get beyond how it looks and they actually taste it love it. It's still one of my best-selling varietals, the 2014 Pinot Noir. And it's so unique in that we picked it, we crushed it, we aged it in French oak barrels for 9.5 months, and we took it out of the barrel and put it directly into the bottle. Nothing came between the grape that we picked and the wine that we put in the bottle. So it is a fresh fruit forward wine that is beautiful. Now the next year, because I'm not always available to educate the drinking public on unfiltered, unfined wine, I bottled a 2015 Pinot Noir from Yorkville Highlands. Now, I do a lot of wine dinners, and one of the chefs described, we poured both the 2014 and the 2015. They described the 2014 as the person that's going to make sure you have a good time always. But the 2015 is what you take home to mama. That's the woman you want to marry, raise your children. She's elegant, classy, and just lovely. So that's the tale of my two Pinots. Since then, I bottled the 2016 Santa Lucia Highlands Pinot because they're also known for their Pinots. And then I returned back home for the 2017 Pinot Noir from the Yorkville Highlands, which just won a gold at the Sunset Magazine wine competition. So those are the four varietals I have. People say, what about, doing a cab? Or what about doing a Chardonnay? I'm like, no, I want to stick with four varietals focus on those unique varietals, play around with the Pinot Noir, and be good at those things and not spread myself too thin.
I think you're hitting it out of the park. I know we had the opportunity to try the 2017 Pinot Noir, and it has a lot of finesse, and it's just, yeah, you're right. It's like, it's very elegant, and yeah, I mean, I love Pinot Noir too. It's so versatile. And the other wines that, you know, we had an opportunity to try equally, I mean, you can tell that you put a lot of care and thought into the wine that you're making, which is fantastic. I mean, and like I said, we're the type of people that definitely also gravitate towards those lesser known varieties that maybe don't get as much love, like Petit Syrah and Symphony and those kind.
I really appreciate that you can recognize that our handcrafted wines are just that. We do put a lot of effort, which is why I moved my winemaking operations from Mendocino to San Francisco, because not only am I a full-time lawyer, I also take care of my 93-year-old mother in Dallas. And, you know, after my father and her husband of 65 years died, I'm in Texas every 2 to 3 weeks. So I was not getting to Mendocino enough to really manage the winemaking process, because I'm a lawyer in San Francisco. I'm there more often than I get to Mendocino, so I am now making wine with Ed Kurtzman in San Francisco. Yeah,
that totally makes sense. And you're a very busy woman. I don't know how you do it all.
Well, God has given me the strength and a lot of energy. And I don't need a lot of sleep. So this weekend was quite nice. I had a big birthday party for my mother last Saturday. She turned 93, and so we had 65 people, many of whom she has known since college, many of whom are in their 90s. I'm like, this is a blessing. So this weekend, the 4th of July, we had off from the law firm, the 4th and the 5th, and had a chance to go up to Yorkville. I entertained some folks who just happened to email and said, we've heard about your wine. Can we stop by? And you know, it's always good to share wine, and, you know, you just make time for the things you love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you moved your winemaking operation to San Francisco. So and it sounded like you're working with another winemaker. So do you two kind of share the winemaking duties, or?
Correct. I have a consulting winemaker. I am fortunately a type A personality, so I can't let go of control that much. We are bottling our 2017 Petite, and every other year I do a rosé of Petite, and so this is the year to do another rosé. So we'll be bottling next Friday. Obviously, I've been involved in the process. I mean, I actually decided that 2 barrels were not good enough. So we're selling that juice from those 2 barrels because they did not add character to the wine. So I do work with a consulting winemaker, and they handle the day-to-day, but at least once a month, I'm there tasting barrels, making decisions about what to do, whether we're going to keep this barrel or not. It is just something that my taste buds have to be satisfied with before we can put it in a bottle and put Theopolis Vineyards on the label.
Absolutely. I mean, it's your reputation and your name at stake, so I totally get that.
And the good news is that I have actually had very good luck with the 2 consulting winemakers that I have had the pleasure of working with.
Well, it definitely is reflected in the wines for sure. So you've been growing grapes for a while now, and now you've, been working, making your own wines, putting them out there in the world. So what has surprised you about growing grapes and making wine?
Well, I guess because I grew up in Texas, and, we had weather and storms and, some years we could cut the hay and sell it. Some years there was not enough hay for the cows. So I'm accustomed to Mother Nature having an impact on your operations. But I guess cattle and livestock and horses are a whole lot different than growing grapes. And so for me, it really has been interesting to see how different the grapes are from year to year, depending on rain, depending on winds, depending on the fires. All of those factors play a huge role in the outcome of the fruit. As far as winemaking is concerned, winemaking is chemistry, but my philosophy is let the fruit make the wine. Great wine starts in the vineyard. If you do what you need to do to get excellent fruit, everything else about winemaking falls into place. I let the fruit do the work.
So you mentioned that one of the goals that you had was getting a vineyard designated, mentioned on the bottle. Are there any other goals that you are still working to achieve in the wine side of things?
Well, it is now the marketing side and getting placement. I had some very good news this year. The Mendocino Wine Growers Association received a call from the Northern California Whole Foods wine buyer, and she was doing this program called Buy Local. So she would have appellations like in Napa or different places. So she'd reached out to Mendocino to see if they were interested in participating. The CEO or the chair of that Mendocino Wine Growers Association sent out an email to all of the growers. I had no idea over 100 wines were submitted, but there was just an article that was published last month where they talked about over 100 Mendocino wineries submitted about over 100 wines, and the wine buyers selected 6 to be featured in all of the Whole Foods Market Northern California stores in March and April. And my 2015 Petit Syrah was selected as one of the 6. So that was a huge win-win. And so I have been primarily selling direct to consumer, and I have been able to combine my legal travels. Like I'll be in New York next week for law, and I've reached out to sommelier friends. So they're hosting a 75-person tasting for me while I'm there for law. So that's how I sell the wines. But my biggest goal now is to get the wine out in more wine bars and more Michelin star restaurants. I have them in some Michelin star restaurants in San Francisco, but again, that's me going in and putting the wines in there because I know someone or because I eat at this restaurant. I need to develop a sales team, like ambassadors, to put on a commission and go out and place the wines in high-end restaurants or high-end wine bars. I don't necessarily want to be Whole Foods. It was a good mix, but I don't need to be in every Tom Thumb or Safeway or whatever the local grocery store is, because I think my wines are unique. And I only produce 800 cases a year right now, so I don't need to be in large retail, but I want to be in boutique wine shops, and I want to be in more Michelin star restaurants. So that is one of my biggest goals going forward. Again, the time to do that is always a challenge.
Yeah, it's challenging, especially when, you're a one woman or two woman or just a small team show. And so, yeah, the marketing piece seems to be a common theme among many of the people we've interviewed on this podcast.
So, it is time consuming, but I think if I were able to put a team of, I've had a few brokers, they do okay for a while and then they disappear. But I need a team of people who can really sell the product. But unfortunately, I find that I sell the wine better than anybody. And, I can't replicate myself or duplicate myself. So I've got to try to find some people who are as passionate about the wine as I am to sell it to the retail place.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you like best about growing grapes and making wine?
I guess I like the look on people's face when they drink a good glass of my wine and they pair it with a wonderful meal. I enjoy the most having winemakers dinners where I get to sit with the chef and some of the attendees, and they get to taste the wine and pick out what it is they want to pair with the wine. That to me is the most satisfying. There's a lot of work that goes into growing grapes. There's a lot of work that goes into making wine. But the end product, oh my God, is for me the greatest reward when people enjoy the wines and they are just craving for more. I can't think of anything more satisfying. We had a winemaker's dinner last month in June, and I just will tell you there were 28 people in attendance, and if you bought your ticket early, you could help pair the wines with the menu that the chef was talking about. And I have to tell you, there was some most magnificent pairings. Like the Symphony, I'm trying to find some of the pairings that were there because it was so enticing. Like, for instance, the 2015 Pinot, they paired with a pan-roasted wild mushrooms and puff pastry with floral-scented herbs and black truffle oil, okay? The Santa Lucia Pinot Noir, they paired with duck confit, dry herb and slow braised, served over apricot, pineapple jam, toasted spicy, and sweet berries. I mean, when people drink my wine and pair it with exquisite food, that is the thing that I enjoy most about making wine. I also enjoy meeting new people. One Market restaurant is one of the restaurants that has been a supporter for me since day one. Recently had Women in Wine, so they had all of these women winemakers there, and I got a chance to meet them. That is so much fun, connecting with your fellow winemakers and sharing ideas and connecting on thoughts about being in this business. That, to me, is why I do this.
Yeah, I loved what you said about the wine dinners. I mean, it's kind of like getting to see your labor of love in action, which is amazing.
Yeah, that to me is the most rewarding of all the things. And, it also makes you feel good when someone posts on social media. I'm sitting here on a Sunday afternoon enjoying a glass of your Symphony with scallop crudo. Or, I'm allergic to seafood, so I can't eat a lot of the things that the Symphony goes well with, but it is the end result of happiness. As I tell people, I've always specialized in pleasure in the bottle. I didn't drink wine back in high school, college, or law school, but I made something called Wonder Punch. And it was very popular. In fact, I said that's how I got elected freshman class president in college because I made some wonderful Wonder Punch. But, it just brings me pleasure to see people enjoy the results of my labors.
Absolutely. The food and wine pairing is big for us as well, but we do have listeners that like to drink wine on its own without food. And I think that's one of the great things about your wines is that they can work with food or on their own as well.
That's one thing that the Pinot Noir is absolutely known for. You can open a bottle of my Pinot Noir now and drink it without pairing it with anything. And the same with the Symphony and the same with the Rosé. With time, and I think I sent you the 2016 Petite, it still has a little high tannins, but when you open it and let it aerate, I opened a bottle for some people who came through on the 4th, and by Friday, it was so smooth, the tannins had really cleared out, and you could just drink it without food. So I like that. Food pairings are great, but sometimes after a long day, you just want a nice glass of wine to chill with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me switch it up a little bit and ask you, do you see any future challenges for grape growing or winemaking in Mendocino County?
Well, I think we're such a unique region. I think it's only going to get better. We're embarking on this branding campaign so that every bottle of wine produced from grapes in Mendocino will be so designated. I think we have the best wine growing region in California. I mean, it's very vast because you've got coast, you have inland growing areas. It is wonderful, and the people there are wonderful too. I think the biggest challenge coming up is the federal government and what a lot of my neighbors in Mendocino are experiencing is marijuana-infused wines. I haven't taken my hand at that, but I think that's going to be a challenge as laws change to legalize marijuana. There's a whole group of Mendocino winemakers who really are trying to get on that bandwagon.
Yeah, we've definitely noticed that more and more over the last year, maybe year and a half, of kind of these hybrid type wines. I've only had the opportunity to try one of them. Not necessarily for me, but I guess there's a market for it. So if there's a market for it, people will make it. Is that something that you think you might dabble in eventually, or are you just kind of like, I'll just stick with what I got? And
I think I'm going to stick with what I got. As a lawyer, I don't need to get involved in questionable ventures. I still got 9 more years of practicing law. I love practicing law, and I want to do it until I choose to not do it anymore. So I think I'm going to leave that for my more adventurous Mendocino growers. But that is a big issue in amongst the growing community. And when you talked about Mendocino in particular, I thought that was quite unique that we actually have meetings where we're talking about this issue.
Yeah, times are really changing for sure. So something we like to ask every person we get a chance to interview on the podcast is what, a lot of our listeners are maybe people who don't work in the wine industry. They're the average wine drinker. So what's one thing you think the average wine drinker should know?
I think the average wine drinker should know there are no bad wines. It is what you like. I would like everyone to enjoy my wines. But if you have a taste bud for more sweet or off dry wines, you're not going to like my wines. And that's okay. So trust your own palate. Buy what you like to drink and stop worrying about looking good or liking something you don't like just because you think that will somehow allure you to some fancy winemaker. So that's what I think we need to focus on.
Yeah, we definitely agree. We've said that on this podcast numerous times that, wine is subjective and it's totally about people's personal preferences. And unless a wine has some kind of flaw, like it's been, like cork taint or something like that, like there's no bad wine. It's just, it comes down to preferences. So it's good to hear that other people feel the same way.
Yep. That's my, that's what I think people really need to realize is people should trust what they like in their palate and leave it at that because, wine is to be enjoyed and there's a number of different wines that something will please your palate. It doesn't have to be wines from Theopolis Vineyards. One day I might make a off-dry Symphony, or I may make a traditional rosé. I doubt it. But until then, if you don't like dry wines, I can give you a referral to plenty of good winemakers who make it on the sweet side.
There you go. Well, that wraps up all the questions we have, but is there any kind of final words that you want to say to our listeners?
Well, I would say that if you are planning a trip to Mendocino or somewhere in the Northern California wine area, try to be here for September the 14th. We have our annual harvest party, and it is a party. It's on September the 14th this year. It runs from 1 o'clock to 6. Tickets are $15 off through August the 3rd. We have live music, and we're introducing a new band with a powerhouse singer. We have dancing in the redwoods, chilling, basking in the sun, relaxing by the pool, unlimited house wine and beer, and a good old-fashioned Texas barbecue with ribs and chicken and potato salad and macaroni salad. And we have a good time, and always top it off with a little ice cream and cherry on the top.
That sounds fantastic. Now I'm like wishing that I lived out in California. Except when it's over 100 degrees, then maybe not so much.
Well, I will tell you, I have had people, because aren't you in the Minneapolis area?
Yes.
And so we have my law firm. We're global, and so we have an office in Minneapolis. And I had several people from that office come to the bottle release party. I've had people come from all over the country and as far as Sweden. So that's not limited to people who live in the Bay Area, because I've had people to actually fly in the morning of the party, get on the bus, because we have a bus that you pay an extra $100. It picks you up in San Francisco and Oakland and takes you up for the 2-hour drive, brings you back. And I had a friend out of North Carolina fly in that morning, take the bus, come back, and catch another flight to Alaska to board a cruise line. So, I mean, people, it's a great party, and people like who I mentioned, I've always specialized in pleasure in a bottle, and so I used to have these parties in high school and college where I charged $10 a head to get in and $5 for my Wonder Punch, and no one left unhappy. And so people come to our harvest and bottle release party because it is a party.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic. So, Theodora Lee, thank you so much for chatting with us and spending your Sunday evening talking with us about wine. It was really awesome to hear your story, and I can't believe that you are making wine and you're a full-time lawyer. I don't know how you do it all.
Well, high energy and good blessings from the Lord above.
We want to thank Theodora again for taking time to chat with us and sharing her amazing wines. So we had a chance to try 4 different wines from Theopolis Vineyards: the 2016 Symphony, the 2016 Rosé of Petite Sirah, the 2017 Pinot Noir, and the 2016 Petite Sirah. We were really impressed with these wines, and we could tell that there's a lot of care taken when making them. And there really is something for every taste and season. She talked about this in the interview, going from light to heavy. So if you're a listener of this show, you know that we appreciate when people are making interesting wine from lesser known varieties. So if you have a palate similar to ours, or you're just looking to try something new, we would highly recommend that you check out these wines. You can go to her website at theopolisvineyards.com to purchase these wines. And we'll also include our tasting notes on each of these wines, as well as links on our show notes page at weeklywineshow.com/175. And with that, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time for another Weekly Wine Show.